Hello, you guys. Welcome to episode 6 of the Crime with Kylie podcast. I am so happy that you've decided to tune in today. In today's episode, we're going to be focusing on Carla Vicentini, who has been missing since 2006. Now, it's important to talk about Carla's case today because although Carla went missing in the United States, her case got very little coverage here. Now, let's get into Carla's case. Carla was born on April 29th of 1983 and was 22 years old when she went missing. She had two loving parents, Orlando and Tanya, and she was the eldest of 3 daughters. Carla was known for her infectious laugh and her big dreams, and by her family, she was described as very kind, focused, but somewhat naive. She always believed that everyone had the best of intentions. She grew up in a small farming town in Brazil, and her native language was Portuguese. And because she grew up in a smaller town, she always dreamed of experiencing big city life. So in the 2 years leading up to Carla turning 22 years old, she saved and saved and saved. She was very happy in late January of 2006 when she was able to afford an exchange program. Now, the student exchange program was supposed to be for 5 months, and Carla was very excited because this is all that she was dreaming about. For her exchange program, she was going to be going to New Jersey. Now, when Carla first arrived in New Jersey, it was nothing like what she expected. Instead of being moved to a big city, Carla was moved to Ledgewood. Even as of 2020, Ledgewood's population is only 4,900. Although the homes are more affordable there's really nothing to do. And as far as sleeping arrangements went, the exchange program really did a horrible job. Her and another exchange student were put in a very sketchy motel called the Roxbury Circle Motel. According to one TripAdvisor review as recent as 2013, a guest gave it a 1-star review and said, "Do not ever stay here, not to save a few bucks. Scary," in all caps. Although the motel wasn't the best, Carla quickly became friends with the other exchange student. Her name was Maria Eduarda, and she was around Carla's age. Also, as I guess a perk of the exchange program, Carla was provided a job at White Castle, and White Castle is apparently a fast food chain. So Carla's first few days in the United States weren't exactly ideal, which is entirely understandable because she was 22 years old and was there to experience big city life while working on her engineering. And because she wasn't happy with her situation, she decided to call her dad and ask for a solution. Her dad, Orlando, arranged for her and Maria to stay with a friend of his named Jose. Orlando was distant friends with Jose, but Jose had moved from Brazil to the United States a few years back and was a 75-year-old accountant. And he lived in an apartment on Ferry Street, which was in Newark, New Jersey. And Newark had the city vibe that Carla was going for. There were bars and restaurants and lots of activities for young people to do. And from the apartment on Ferry Street, she was actually in walking distance to a lot of those, as Ferry Street is a popular tourist destination. So 18 days after Carla moved to the United States, she was moving into Jose's apartment. Her and Maria moved in on Monday, February 6th of 2006. And once there, Carla quickly got a new job at the Mediterranean Manor. The Mediterranean Manor is on 255 Jefferson Street. And depending on where Carla was on Ferry Street, that was about a 26-minute walk away. And Mediterranean Manor is like this catering and banquet hall. In comparison to working at White Castle, Carla really enjoyed this job, and working as a caterer worked really well for her because she did speak very limited English. February 9th of 2006 started like any other day, or so we were originally told. Carla started her day off at the Mediterranean Manor, and after she finished her shift, she was going to go down to the Adega Bar and Grill, where Maria was going to be working as a cocktail waitress for her first day of work. That night was a cold and snowy night, and after she finished her shift at the Mediterranean Manor, she arrived at the Adega Bar and Grill at about 10:30 p.m. At some point, Carla walked back home to the apartment on Ferry Street to change out of her work clothes, and when she came back, she struck up a conversation with a man who has remained unidentified to this day. Now, because Maria was technically working and still on her shift, she really didn't know what the conversation between Carla and the unknown man was about. Now, Maria has described the man that Carla was with as very strange. She said that this man was heavier set, had a black t-shirt on, had blue eyes, salt and pepper hair, and a scraggly beard. To her estimates, he was in his early 30s. Maria also said that while everyone was dancing and jumping around, that he was just quiet and not moving at all. She said that he looked very unhappy, and she was unsure how him and Carla were communicating since she spoke very little English, and that is all that he spoke. But at some point during their conversation, Carla came over to Maria and handed her a little piece of paper with the man's phone number on it. However, at some point during Maria's shift, that piece of paper would be lost. After giving Maria the piece of paper, Carla then said that the man had a photograph in his car that she was going to go check out. Carla also told Maria that after she was done looking at the photograph, she would be back at their apartment in 10 minutes max. And at that point, it was about 2:30 a.m., so Carla planned on being back at their shared apartment at around 2:40 a.m. And it was very important for Carla to be at the apartment before Maria because Carla would be able to let Maria in, otherwise Maria didn't have her own key. Now at some point that night, Maria was able to get into the apartment, and I'm assuming it was Jose who let her in, although no sources have confirmed that exact piece of information. When Maria was inside of the apartment, she found something very odd. She found her cell phone, her wallet, her passport, and her jacket. And this night was very cold and snowy, so she would not have left her apartment without her jacket. And this jacket is a significant piece of evidence showing that Carla had made it back to her apartment. She was wearing that Hugo Boss jacket that night after she left the Adega Bar. So if the jacket was at the apartment, why wasn't Carla? Immediately after finding Carla's items but not Carla, Maria reported Carla as missing. When Carla went missing, she was wearing a white sleeveless shirt, blue jeans, and light brown heeled ankle boots. She had multiple piercings in her ears, a pierced navel, a pierced tongue, a tattoo of a chameleon on the right side of her abdomen, and a tattoo of a dark gray angel with open wings on her back. She had also been wearing a Morme brand sports watch on her left wrist, a large silver ring on her ring finger, and 2 silver rope-style necklaces with 1 pendant. And it is thought that she had made it back to the apartment that night. And whether the man who she was talking to at the bar was involved is unknown. But there is another suspicious person in this case who we have briefly talked about. His name is Jose Fernandes. Yes, the 75-year-old accountant who they were living with. Now I do have to say that most of the suspicion on Jose is from Carla's family, but rightfully so. After Carla went missing, her mom flew out from Brazil to retrace her daughter's steps and try to find her. She was able to find that multiple people saw Carla walking home that night by herself. So it is very likely that Carla made it to her apartment, especially considering when the jacket was there, the passport, the phone, and everything else that Carla could possibly need to go out. Now when police came to investigate, they did end up asking Jose Fernandes a few questions. Very basic questions like, what were you doing the night that Carla disappeared? He told police that he was asleep the evening of Carla's disappearance and did not hear her return home. Yet 2 weeks later, at a public hearing at the Brazilian Senate, he testified that he heard Carla entering and leaving the apartment that evening. It's also important to mention now that 5 days after Carla disappeared, Jose moved all the way back to Brazil, and he cut all contact with Carla's family. Jose apparently told the authorities that he was moving back to Brazil so that way he could finalize a divorce with his wife. However, that has never been confirmed. Now here's where things take a much darker turn. The day before Carla went missing, she placed a call to her boyfriend back home in Brazil. She said that Jose had been touching her inappropriately and was making her feel very uncomfortable. Because of that, she told her boyfriend that she was moving out in 4 days, which would have been 3 days after she disappeared, February 12th of 2006. Carla's mom said, "We think he knows something more than what he has said." And based off of what we just talked about, I believe that she is right. Meanwhile, the Newark police weren't concerned about Jose. They were instead focused on a string of very weird phone calls. The first anonymous phone call came shortly after Carla disappeared, and they claimed that a woman was being held against her will in an apartment in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. The caller allegedly said that the apartment she was being held in was apartment 12H. However, the Newark police have never confirmed whether this call was a tip or a hoax. A few days later, there was another phone call, but this phone call was to Carla's boss, and it was a woman screaming for help. However, not long after the call started, the caller abruptly hung up. And I have to tell you guys, it has been so hard to find information on Carla's disappearance. It seems like every mainstream American news article says the same thing, that a Brazilian exchange student was walking home from a bar and went missing, never to be seen again. Each article only mentions the man with the salt and pepper hair, but none mention Jose. It took forever to even find Jose's last name as Fernandes. And that is why it is so important to talk about Carla Vicentini's case today and talk about her disappearance, because no one else has, at least not for many years. Most of the details from this case are from tapatalk.com, from an old forum from 2006 to 2007. And if you're listening on YouTube, I'll have all of the links below and all of the sources below so you can check it out yourself. But it really is sad how over the years the information on Carla's case has just dwindled and dwindled and dwindled, when she is still a missing person who needs to be found. On the 9th year that Carla Vicentini was missing, the FBI posted a $20,000 reward, and to this day that reward is still unclaimed and is still up there. Someone out there knows exactly what happened to Carla. Someone had to have seen something or potentially seen her. Carla has so many identifying marks like her tattoos and her piercings. It is very strange that no one has seen her. If Carla is still alive today, she would be 40 years old. And her parents and her sisters are still searching for answers, and they are devastated that they don't know what happened to their Carla. And I really hope that soon Carla is found and reunited with her family. If any of you have a valid tip on her case, I will leave the contact information on the screen. Once again, thank you guys so much for listening to Carla Vicentini's case, and I will see you guys next week for episode 7.